Yep.
Hey, hello, Internet. We are back. We're the Cinema Joes. As you probably know, I am Justin. I'm here with my two friends, Casey and
Hello.
Noah.
Yo.
And today we're going to be talking about our penultimate movie in the alternative superhero films marathon. And today we have Unbreakable, which is the follow-up for M Night Shyamalan right after Sixth Sense. You know,
And
not as
when
much
we say
fanfare.
follow up, it has nothing to do story wise. It's just
No,
his
no,
next
no. I
movie.
just mean the next film he
They're
did.
not
Yeah.
connected in
The,
any
the
way except
original
for that
title
No,
Bruce
no,
Willis
they're
and
really
M
not.
Night.
Other
the
than,
original
other
title
than,
was The Seventh Sense.
yeah. It's funny. We have here a kind of a different kind of superhero movie, which is why I chose it. I should put a major spoiler alert for this discussion. There is a
Yeah.
major plot twist toward the end, which we'll
But it
get
is.
into the whether we think it works or not. But I just want to put that out there for people who haven't seen this film
Right.
and be listening. So this is a movie. It's pretty mysterious. We start with Bruce Willis, who's he's just kind of down in the dumps, and you're not quite sure why. And as the movie goes along, you kind of learn more about him, and you figure he might have some kind of superpower that he's been keeping at bay. And that becomes a lot more difficult to hide once he is contacted by the enigmatic Elijah Price, who has been born with this condition where his bones are really like so easily breakable that it's hard for him. Like he has to like travel in a wheelchair sometimes. Well, at least toward the end, he's very reclusive, and you get the sense there's a lot more going on behind the image he's projecting. So,
Mhm.
this is, I think, maybe the most different in terms of what we've seen from these superhero films, even in this alternative universe that we're exploring. Do you guys think this? Do you think this qualifies? Do you think it is? Are there any similarities you see between the struggle that David Dunn, who's played by Bruce Willis, goes through in this movie?
I think what I really enjoyed about this film was how different it was from the other movies because the other ones they take place almost in like a comic book world. At least from what I'm
Hmm.
thinking of. I can't think of an exception to that rule.
They tried to, yeah.
Yeah, maybe the first two, Swamp Thing and Darkman, but they definitely are on the border, if anything. This one
Mhm.
though is really they strive for the real world feel. There's no comic book. In fact, that's the whole point of the movie. It's you take these comic book heroes and you get rid of the exaggeration and you bring it down to the normal mundane activities where the
Yeah.
superheroes that they talk about in the comics are just regular guys who have a little bit of an edge. So I really enjoyed that part.
Yeah, and I think, of course, I'm still digesting that film in relation to all the others that we've seen. But right now, I feel like I'm just going to go out and say that I think out of the six movies that we've seen that we're doing here total, this one might be my favorite because of the fact that not because I think it's necessarily the best. Because the films are all different in what they try to do, but I like how different this one is in that it does try to take the idea of a comic book superhero and make it seem perfectly plausible in the sense that these superheroes maybe not necessarily having superpowers, but just having certain instincts that sort of give them a little, like Casey said, give them a little edge over everyone else. I like the way it's built up. I like the way they develop the relationship between David and Elijah. I like the use of biblical names for the
Oh,
characters.
that went right over my head.
As soon as you said it is when I just realized it. Yeah, I didn't. Even
I mean, I really liked everything about the film except for Shyamalan's cameo, which stuck out like a sore thumb.
Yeah.
That also went over my
As
head. I
soon as
didn't
the
catch
guy-
it until you pointed that out.
As soon as the guy came into profile, I was like, "Oh, god damn it, Shyamalan! I know that's you."
It's funny because I definitely agree with you. I've loved seeing this kind of tone as opposed to what we've been given so far. It's
Mhm.
still, it doesn't, I don't know if I would quite call it realism necessarily, but
Mhm.
it's certainly more somber. It takes itself a little more seriously than even something like The Crow, which I thought took itself more seriously than Swamp Thing or Darkman or even Mystery Men.
I just think it was
Yeah.
so much heavier in its
Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
it's very, yeah, that's a good way to describe it. It's very heavy. You're sure you see that there's a burden on these characters, but you're not quite sure why. And I think as you go through the movie, you start to understand why, and some scenes make a little more sense. I think once you realize what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think. The thing about this movie that I think distinguishes it is this is definitely more, I think, about what we typically expect from a superhero in terms of altruistic goals. We've kind of seen, you could maybe argue anti-heroes in the other films that we've seen. Some of them have been hell-bent on vengeance. Some of them have just been, concentrated on this one specific thing, even if it's not, getting revenge necessarily. That does seem to be a thing that happens. But also, there's the thing I like about this movie more than the others is there's so much more of I love this exploring the idea of the burden upon people who have these kinds of powers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I think he's wrestling with the entire time. And I think, the whole thing with water, which, I'm still kind of... I'm not quite sure if that really works for me, especially glaring.
Yeah.
Having seen the film that he followed up that he did after this one, which was Signs, where the whole thing was water again. Are you kidding me? He used the same thing. What? Okay, I don't want to. I shouldn't go off a tangent there.
And then Last Airbender, where there was water bending.
Yeah. But I did like that about this movie. There's so much more of a sense of if someone had these powers, how would he react? How would he be? It's pretty. I think it's plausible for him to feel like he's reluctant to use them.
Yeah.
Because of the burden of responsibility.
He strives very hard to stay in the mundane. Throughout the whole. In fact, that's one of the things I didn't really care for in the movie. It was too slow. Not slow, but like you spend 3/4 of the movie, stuck in the mundane.
Yeah.
And that wasn't interesting at all. It's like, okay, we get it. This guy is, special. Come on. The audience knows it. Now we're just waiting like an hour for this guy to pick it up. So I felt like that could have went a little quicker.
I felt that a lot of that was handled very well though, and it kept the question because I felt that it all that time was spent back and forth of asking the question whether or not he does have a power, whether or not he could be considered a hero, and it really the whole mundane aspect really makes us. I think it's intended to draw us in and make us feel like okay, obviously he's just a regular guy who's maybe been very lucky in terms of not getting sick or not having any serious injury or anything like that. And then of course the twist ends up being that yes, he does have a power of some sort, making him at least giving him the potential to be a hero if he wants to acknowledge it. Like I have to say I was personally like as far as the mundane stuff that went on, I liked, for example, how they went into his relationship with his wife. I was a little less convinced by the kid because the kid is so wide-eyed and starry-eyed. Like it's almost a little too much. Like I get the kid really looking up to his dad aspect of it, but at the same time it felt, as a result, he felt less like a real kid in some aspects. That said, I did really like the scene where the kid threatens to shoot David, where he's found the gun. He has the gun on the table, and just Bruce Willis's reaction to what the hell are you doing, and then it cuts over and you're like, shit, he has a gun. I think that was my favorite scene in the movie because I did not know if he was going to shoot him or not.
Yeah, it was very tense. That was probably that was probably, in the Shakespearean sense, the climax of the film, We're right at the top of the arc, and then you started getting the resolution.
Yeah, and after that, when he finally gets the gun, everyone in the room, they just kind of sink to the floor. Like I think that's a very realistic reaction to a scene like that,
Oh, absolutely. But going back to, you made me think of it with the kid, the scene where they're doing the weight lifting. Did no one else think that scene went on like 2 minutes too long? Couldn't they have just condensed it into, we get the point, you're strong, and that's what I'm talking about though. I feel like when the movie did too much of that, just stretching out this test pushing thing, which is fine. I like that concept, but I think they could have, hit the climax earlier on a much quicker pace.
Yeah, there's definitely a sense of trying to build up to this thing that we kind of know from, I'd say, pretty early on in the movie. Yeah, I'd agree with you on that scene. That was one thing as I was watching. I was kind of like, all right, I see where I understand where this is going, and then it goes there, and you're kind of like, all right, that makes sense. And then
we get going. It, and then they keep doing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not like surprising or anything, because like that can be a really pleasurable thing when you say, okay, I think I know where this scene's going, and then it goes somewhere else. This goes exactly where you think it is.
Right.
So it kind of is like you're kind of like, okay,
we get it.
Yeah.
Let's go to the next scene now.
Yeah. And to get back to what you were saying, Casey, about this definitely is a slow-paced kind of movie, and I guess that was kind of refreshing for me, especially after some of the stuff we've seen.
I saw this after Super, so that was definitely.
Oh, okay.
Definitely
Yeah.
refreshing face.
Oh man. And so I like that. I also like the look of it. It's kind of got this noirish look to it. It's like it's definitely darker. There's darker tones. There's a lot of blue, which I think is kind of which probably
Oh
has,
yeah, that's right.
probably
That's right.
ties
There
into
is.
the water kind of thing. There's definitely a lot more. I think this is really visually interesting, and I wish the I wish the writing had matched
Yeah.
the look of the film and the technique, the visual technique of this movie, because I know it's been said before, but this film really proves, I think, that Shyamalan is a much better director, especially with a camera,
Then writer.
than a writer.
Yeah.
Which
I
makes
got
Yeah,
me
like
wonder-
he does have a really distinct and a really interesting visual style. You know, he obviously knows how to frame a shot. He knows how to, set up a shot, especially if it's one of those scenes that's just done in one shot, because he has a lot of those. Setting it up in a way that's kind of non-traditional, but in a way that's sort of he's good at using setup shots that on their own add to atmosphere just as much as the setting or the dialogue or the characters themselves. Because, and you're right, that has been said before. Like, he's a better technical director than he is like a writer and director. Almost like Neil Blomkamp.
Yeah.
Where you almost, Justin, I know you've said this before. Like with Neil Blom, is it Neil or Niels?
Neil.
With Neil Blomkamp, we've had this discussion before. Whether or not it would be better if he would get someone else to do the screenplays for him.
Well, it's funny. I don't want to go off too much of a tangent here, but with his most recent film was After Earth, which, believe it or not, was not written by Shyamalan. Though I'd have to check. It may have had some contributions from him, so he might have screwed that up.
Okay, he has to have a good screenplay. He has to have a good screenplay.
I gotta say though, I'd say for the most part, I think the cast here does a pretty good job with some pretty stiff dialogue. It's weird because I think sometimes I almost wonder. I think it's almost impossible to really like make the audience forget how bad the dialogue is here. But I think they do a pretty good job of getting, maybe distracting you enough.
Any particular examples in terms of the dialogue?
The thing I think about is the whole scene with where the wife kind of wants to get back with him.
When she
Basically, it's not too long after the first accident he has on the train, and we get this scene where it seems like I don't know if you got, it seems like they're in different parts of the house. That seemed to be like the impression I was getting, or like they didn't share a bedroom at least.
Right. He was sleeping in his son's room, and she had.
Okay. Yeah. Which was that was kind of a weird, that was kind of cool because I'm like that it showed their separation, but they weren't quite ready to fully, separate.
It also shows it without having to explain it.
Right.
Yeah, like you got the sense you knew there was something that was keeping them apart, and I think as the movie goes along, you figure it out. But yeah, that one scene I thought when she's talking to him about asking him if he's been with anyone, if he moved on. I don't know, I felt like a lot of those lines are there's just like a real stiltedness to them, where it's like here's one line and here's another line. It's like there's not like a flow to the language.
There's
but I
also
think she does a really good job of it. I think she does as good a job as she can. And
Robin
the
Wright.
emotion I think she shows in that scene is really effective.
Oh my God, that was her name, Robin Wright.
Yeah,
Robin Wright.
She's won awards, not for this particular movie, but she's a great actress.
Yeah.
Well, no, yeah, I saw her.
She's Jenny in Forrest
I saw her
Gump.
in the Congress last year.
Oh yeah, she was in the Congress.
House of Cards on Netflix.
Yeah,
That's
in
what
House
she's
of
won more
Cards.
recent awards for.
Forrest Gump. She was Jenny Finch.
What? How did I forget all this?
Yeah.
But I think just a comment on that scene. There's also really no dialogue in that scene. It's her talking to David, and we're looking at the back of David's head.
Yeah.
So it is a very one-way scene.
Yeah, I'd agree with you there.
Which was definitely a deliberate choice. I don't have a particular opinion in terms of whether or not that worked, but I can get there are some scenes like that in the movie where you're like, okay, he's definitely filming this and wrote it and set it up to be perceived a certain way, and it's kind of up to you whether or not I think that works or not. That scene, like I said, I don't have really much of an opinion, but it is a strange decision for a scene like that to not even show Bruce Willis reacting.
While we're on the topic of the cast, I think this is possibly one of the best roles I've seen Jackson in. I know it's a little, I guess, weaker script than he's done before, but I absolutely adored his performance in this character as Elijah Price.
Well, he's not playing an unstoppable badass for once.
Yeah.
I mean, which is what he plays in like every other movie, and he's a great job. He does a great job with it. I love all the stuff he does with Nick Fury in the Marvel movies. I always his scene in those scenes in those movies whenever he's around. Obviously, he's fantastic in Pulp Fiction. I think he was one of the least bad casting choices in the Star Wars prequels.
Him and Ewan McGregor. Everyone else.
Yeah, no, he was one of the guys, like his scenes. I'm like, okay, that's Mace Windu, but it's a completely different role because he's not playing a badass, and he's not supposed to bring the character across as a badass because we know he's not. We know he's.
And yet he still has this air of, for lack of a better word, confidence. Like he
has a presence. He has this presence, even in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
When he's in the comic book store, you're still like, what's he gonna do?
Yeah.
Is that guy about to die?
I adored this role of his. I really enjoyed every second he was on scene.
Excuse me, how much does this one cost?
Yeah, I really think it's funny when the guy's trying to wheel him out of the comic book store. I think it's really effective. Just like he has this really flat expression, but then he'll like kind of like lash out at the comic books. He'll sort of like do this little frown, and it's just like it's really kind of funny because you're not quite sure why is this scene here. It just seems so strange. We're just like, okay, all of a sudden we're in this comic book store, and he doesn't want to get out of the comic book store, and it's just like I don't know. It's just like this little touch he does every time he just like it pisses off the comic book store owner to no end.
Yeah.
I think it is a real credit to him as an actor. He's one of those actors that I feel like gets typecast a lot, and he'll show you these little moments of what he can do. I mean, he's been around so long that I think people have this image of him, and he really has had a more varied career than you might think. It's just usually in films you haven't heard of.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I have to say, I love the one line from the comic store owner. Better not be jerking off to the Japanese comics. I swear to God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice one.
I guess then let's talk about the actual hero aspect, or the villain aspect.
The twist.
My first question, I guess, is: do you think he's going to continue? And I guess this is completely open to interpretation. Do you think he's going to continue being the hero, or is he going to return now to his mundane life now that the air quotes villain has been subdued? Do you think he can now that he's aware of his responsibility?
I have to say, I kind of wish they had not done that with the perfunctory text boxes explaining that the guy gets arrested after that and is locked away for life.
Yeah.
I'm like, leaving that open-ended would have been much more interesting.
Absolutely.
It's more, I think it was too strenuous an effort to tie everything up with a nice little bow.
I almost wonder if it was like a studio decision to do that. I don't know. I could be wrong.
I don't know either.
It just seems so strange. It just like there was nothing leading up to that. It was like you're only used to seeing them in movies based on true stories, really.
Right.
It just seemed really strange. Like, wait, why are you telling us this? Yeah, that didn't work for me at all. I agree.
But they didn't mention anything about what the hell's his name? I'm gonna call him Bruce Willis. They didn't mention anything about what Bruce Willis did after that event. It just talked about Elijah.
Yeah.
So that's why I asked the question. Like, what do you think he's gonna do now?
Well, I think he will because, and this is what the whole twist. What the whole twist kind of spins around is this, age-old idea. People have started writing these comics and really delving into the ideas of superheroes. There's been the whole discussion about the sort of the symbiotic relationship between the heroes and the villains. Like the idea that, well, Batman, just the existence of Batman creates the Joker and the Riddler and the Penguin. Like just either someone trying to be a significant villain or a significant crime boss, or on the other hand, someone.
Well, we heard that.
Or someone trying to be a hero to fight against crime automatically causes an opposite reaction on the other side.
Right, and in Batman Begins, they mention this in the end about escalation. What about escalation? The officer asks. We start having a Batman. What are they going to start doing?
Exactly. That's, people have been diving into that. The fact of Superman's existence makes some people want to beat him. And in the same way, Bruce Willis is kind of turned into a hero because of Elijah's pushing, which we then find out is because, he was trying to be a supervillain. He was trying to be a villain.
I don't
and
know if
that
he was trying
pushes.
to be a villain.
Yeah, I
think
didn't read it that way.
his entire
That's
motivation was to
No?
find a David, find the Unbreakable guy. That
Yeah.
he wasn't actively trying to kill people. He was sacrificing them
Well,
for,
yes,
in his mind, a
was
greater
trying.
good. Even though I think
Yeah.
his evil outweighed
It's
the
an
good.
Ozymandias like quality to him here.
Mm.
I mean,
Yeah,
Ozymandias, the Watchmen character, not
Right, not the Egyptian thing.
and I think, and again, getting back to, I think, commending Samuel L. Jackson, which I'm always willing to do, that scene where he reveals, how this was part of his plan, I think you do see the pain. Like, you do see him kind of justifying it to himself. Like, look, I found you. There's this sense he knows what he had to do, and that's what I think makes him interesting.
Mhm.
It's not just that he callously did this all, it's that he did this all knowing the consequences, knowing that there were going to be innocent people killed in order to find this hero, and I guess, in order to save humanity, and probably justify to himself that there was something opposite of him.
Yeah,
But at the same
That
time,
there's something that
we don't see the evidence that just having David realize his powers is going to lead to a lot of people being saved. I mean, he saved the
Right.
lives of 2 kids. Do those 2 kids balance out
The
300 and something deaths.
still to create him?
Can we just? I was a little confused, but I might have missed something. But I know the father of the family.
In the end, the house was broken in.
The house was broken in. The father was killed.
The wife was also killed.
The mother,
Yeah.
was she already dead when he found her though? Because I was really confused.
Yeah.
Because it looked like she was alive. Oh, she was.
I think it was shot to look like she was alive when he arrived, because
Yeah.
he kind of gestures to her. But I
Right.
think by the time he actually has a chance to look closer, he realizes she's been.
Yeah, I think he goes and he saves the children first.
Yeah,
I guess.
yeah.
So I don't, I want to keep going with this question here, but I just want to take some time to the scene where he fights the guy who breaks into their home. I think that to me was just masterfully done. The way how it's such a non-traditional superhero fight.
Oh yeah.
You have the hero who is shrouded, by the way, very, very deliberately shrouded in this raincoat.
Yeah, I like that imagery.
With
That was
his
really cool.
just putting the guy in a
With
chokehold.
security written on the back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just putting him in a chokehold. The whole fight. The villain has more to do in that scene than the hero. The hero is just basically holding on.
Right.
Yeah.
And strangling.
And I love, like, it's just, all you hear is them crashing into things and the grunting of
And the
villain.
dents in the wall.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed the visual damage that they were doing to the
It was
wall.
like this
that's true,
weird
actually,
kind
it's
of
true.
dance, and the raincoat made him seem almost like ghost-like. There was this really,
Yeah.
that was a really effective scene. And it's just so, because, and again, it gets to, we're not used to seeing that in these kinds of movies. It's, I think it's really effective
really like
for this moment, especially for David sort of coming into his own as a hero.
But just to finish the question on the
Yeah.
on the villainy, Justin brought this up, and I think this is a great question. Elijah brought David to his full powers, air quote powers. But in order to do so, he killed around 400 people. Do you really think he's gonna save that many people in his remaining life?
Yeah.
I think it's statistically unlikely.
Yeah. And I think because I think it's even more complicated, where it's like, I think there is an altruistic part of it for Elijah, but I think it's also to make himself believe that there could be superheroes.
Yeah, absolutely.
In
You're
this
absolutely right. Like he's obsessed with this idea. He becomes obsessed with this idea, and he goes through extraordinary lengths to prove that he's right. It really is an interesting case of somebody who read comic books his entire life, got obsessed with something in them, and then went crazy.
We'll be talking more about that when we get to Super.
Oh yeah.
And it's the other thing about what he's doing. I mean, what his plan was. His plan was to basically, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it was to basically cause these large-scale tragedies in the hopes of finding the one survivor.
Yeah, it was to create situations where you would have to be a Superman of sorts in order to survive.
Right.
Like
And
one of those.
he found him after the third tragedy.
That
but
we know
if you think
of.
about it, right,
That we
he
know
would have
of.
kept going, wouldn't he have?
Yeah, if he didn't find David after the third one, yeah.
And that's also kind of why I wish they had left the ending a little bit more vague. to sort of leave a sense of, okay, what is going to happen now? Is Elijah satisfied?
Right.
Is David convinced that he should work as a hero? Like, we don't know any of that. And we know what happens in regards to Elijah. We don't know what happens to David. I wish it had gone both ways, you know?
So then I guess we'll close out. I'm not sure how long we've been going, but let's close out on this question. Do you think David counts as a superhero, or is he just an above-average person?
I think it depends how we choose to define it. I think he's maybe more of a superhero than what we've seen so far. I guess you could argue the Mystery Men are, even though their powers are questionable. Here's someone clearly with ability, but I think the fact that he wrestles with his responsibility is something that superheroes definitely do. I mean, I think the Spider-Man movies, the original Raimi Spider-Man movies, deal a lot with that. And it's, the fact he doesn't have a costume, I don't even think he sees himself as a superhero. But based on what he does, and that he does seem to, at least, before he finds out about Elijah's master plan, he does seem to maybe turn over a new leaf and say, okay, maybe I do want to take on this responsibility, because he realizes he did some good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I would define him that way, but I do like the fact that this doesn't seem like our typical superhero. He doesn't have a costume. He's not even quite sure if he wants to be one. But I would definitely define him that way.
I would say he's a hero as well, because he's very identifiably human, as opposed to, because we've talked a lot about how the Crow and Darkman in a lot of ways we're very much anti-heroes in certain aspects. Swamp Thing, of course, is a super creature with this superpower, and then the Mystery Men are also kind of like not everyday schmucks. They're kind of like very eccentric schmucks who just decided to do this. But Bruce Willis really does. And it's a great performance from Bruce Willis.
It's very subdued.
I'm watching this movie like, why, Bruce? Why did you not do more roles like this? Why do you keep doing fucking Expendables? Why do you keep
Hey, don't knock the Expendables. I haven't seen it, but they keep making money, so they must be decent.
They made a lot of money.
Like Bruce Willis, he's one of those guys who really can be a very good actor when he wants to and when he's in the right movie. Because I also thought he was really good in Sixth Sense. He's really good in the original Die Hard. Like Samuel L. Jackson, he gets typecast so much, but he's capable of very, very subtle acting when he wants to. So I really appreciated that aspect of the movie. So yeah, I'd say he's a hero.
I don't think he's going to go out of his way to be the Batman of Philadelphia or New York or wherever they end up going. I think he's going to continue his day job, and if he ever encounters somebody who, is going to do something really despicable, he might go out of his way to rectify the situation. But
I think his Batman voice would be much better than Christian Bale's. I'm Batman.
But so that said, I hesitate to call him really a superhero. He definitely feels a responsibility because of his edge, but I hesitate to really call him a superhero, just based on how I think he's going to continue on. Yeah, but again, that's up to my interpretation.
There's like a lack of regularity. There's not.
Right.
Whereas people like Batman are, I think, much more have committed fully to this. And I think this movie does, even at the end, it does kind of throw that into question, whether this is something that...
And now that we've brought that out, it actually brings up an interesting point. You can say the same thing almost about Darkman and Swamp Thing. You have no idea what they're going to do after their story is over.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
You can presume the Mystery Men are going to keep fighting crime. What's the fourth film? Oh, and The Crow. Well, The Crow, we know what happens to him.
Yeah. He's there for that strict purpose, and then he's out.
So I hesitate...
It's your problem, humanity.
Right. Based on that interpretation, based on what I just said, if a superhero has to actually commit to fighting crime, it's arguable that all the 5 we've talked about now, except for the Mystery Men, cannot be considered. So that's just food for thought.
Okay.
That's a good way to go out, I suppose. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you've made it this far, we are the Cinema Joes. This was Unbreakable. Check out our next episode where we talk about 2010 Super, directed by James Gunn.
Super.
Thanks for asking.
Super, guys.